I have prided myself over the years at trying to be somewhat of a Renaissance man, a person of many skills and talents. Yet, as I get older, I am not only aware of my own limitations, but I am willing to freely admit that there are things that I am just not able to do or do well. I cannot draw anything to save my life. I cannot and should not be entrusted to the care of any plant because it will not end well. Despite my 6-foot-tall frame, a future as a basketball player was never in the cards. Do not even get me started on the topic of Sudoku puzzles. And although I have always been good with words, and I now find myself in a profession where I find myself having to regularly write original content of 2,000 to 2,500 words a week, I am not someone who was inclined to writing poetry. Poets are, in my humblest of opinions, some of the most hallowed of the prophetic people throughout history that form one of the sources of our living tradition. It takes a certain kind of magic to take fewer words than a standard paragraph and to transform them in such a way as to not only encapsulate the enormity of human emotion, but to do it in such a way as to transcend across time and speak to not only the present day of when the poem was written, but to other future generations that happen to come upon their words. Poetry is also unique in the sense that it is a living work. If you were to have 100 people pick up and read the exact same poem, I can almost guarantee you that the message it had to impart would be felt and received completely different by all 100 people. I could also almost guarantee that there would be multiple messages that the poem had to share. We heard one of those enigmatic, multifaceted poems as our reading for today. Welsh poet Dylan Thomas's immortal 1951 poem, "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." There is an irony to calling Thomas's poem immortal, as many literary scholars will tell you that Thomas wrote the poem about the impending death of his father a year later. The poem has become famous for its frequently repeated and often quoted refrain, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." Thomas's poem serves as a powerful reminder that even in the face of death, there is still an opportunity for us to live with vitality, purpose, and love. It is not a call to fight against death, but rather a call to live authentically and passionately in its presence. It is a call to seize the day and embrace all of the opportunities that life has to offer, knowing that the journey will one day come to an end. There are many themes that are present within Thomas's poem that speak to the reality of us as UUs. That call to live authentically and passionately, embodied in the words "rage, rage against the dying of the light," encourages us to be true to ourselves, to discover our passions, and to live our lives with intention and purpose, honoring the call to burn and rave while our own light is still burning bright. Thomas illustrates this in the next 4 stanzas by presenting us with 4 different archetypes of those who choose to respond to death in their own ways. The wise are those who, in their old age, understand the natural cycle of life and death. Although they choose to accept it gracefully because their words had forked no lightning, there is still a sense of incompleteness and a feeling that there is still more that they have to do and to achieve in this world. The good are those who have lived virtuous lives. They are ones who have embodied goodness and love through their words and deeds, and they are the pillars of the community, the moral exemplars that we are to look to. Yet they still find themselves crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, implying that they have become aware of the reality of death and wishing that there is more that they could have done to make a difference in the world. The wild are those who have had no fear of living life. They have done so with passion and intensity, embracing the world with a sense of unbridled enthusiasm. Their joie de vivre has led them to live their lives without having to confront their own mortality. Once they come to the realization that death is a natural progression of life that will be true for them, they have a sense of sadness that their lives will soon be reaching the end. The grave are the resolute among us who approach death with a sense of seriousness, perhaps even one of responsibility and duty. Yet they possess a blinding sight that has come to them once they have accepted their mortality, which causes them to reflect back on their legacy, all they have done, and all that they still have left to accomplish. Thomas's goal in presenting each of these archetypes is to show the diversity of human existence and to show that even in the most virtuous of souls, there is still a longing of things being left unfinished and a natural desire to rage against the dying of the light, which Thomas only in the final stanza directs at his dying father, imploring him to continue on in life and live out all of the things that he may still have yet to do. While Thomas may have been intending the poem to speak to his dying father, the words could unknowingly have been speaking to Thomas in his life. Born in 1914 in Swansea in southeastern Wales, Thomas found early success right out of school as a journalist for the South Wales Daily Post and as an actor and playwright for stage, radio, and film during World War II. In spite of his early success and unbridled potential, Thomas was often very candid about the difficulties that he faced making a living for himself and his family as a writer, which also led him to adopt a transient lifestyle, the lifetime of alcohol abuse. 2 years after writing Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, considered to be one of his most famous writings, he was visiting New York City preparing a staging of his play Under Mill Wood when he became ill and fell into a coma that he would ultimately never come out of, dying at the age of 39. Although Thomas's is one which speaks ultimately to confronting the reality of death and the challenge of examining our own lives and embracing the full spectrum of human existence, I find myself coming back to the second part of Thomas's oft-quoted refrain, rage against the dying of the light. Brazilian author Paulo Coelho was once quoted as saying, quote, "There are some things in life that are worth fighting for to the end." What are the things in our life that are worth fighting for until the end? For what purposes are we called to rage against the dying of light? What means so much to us that we feel called to rage against the dying of light in order to see it realized? And that, inevitably, ends up bringing me back to this church. I cannot help but think of all the people that have come before me for whom this space, both its physical walls and everything else that it stands for, both here in Stockton and beyond, meant so much that they were willing to rage against the dying of light to see it continue and to have a future. It's not easy work to sustain a church community in the best of times, especially in these post-pandemic times. It is hard when those who were so dynamic and so passionate about raging against the dying of light and who did it so well are no longer with us. It is hard when all of us are tired, burned out, and feel the weight of doing everything to make somewhere survive and continue on. Most days, going gentle into that good night seems so much easier than always having to rage. But does that mean that we risk having to admit that what we have been raging against is no longer worth fighting? If you were expecting an answer wrapped all pretty and with a nice big bow, I am afraid this is unfortunately one of those sermons where I do not have that for you. Also, wrapping gifts is something I have long ago accepted that I am not good at. To quote one of my favorite authors and poets, Jan Richardson, "It is not for me to reckon whether you should linger or you should leave. But I will say this. I also know what feeling tired and burnt out is like. I know what it is like to live in that sense of fatigue. But I know that this place, this church, this community, and everything that it stands for is worth continuing to fight for until the end, in spite of everything. So, for as long as I am able, I choose to rage against the dying of light for a little bit longer, grit my teeth, and continue to move forward. For those of you who still want to rage against the dying of light a little longer, but are tired and need a rest, may you take it for however long you need. Maybe we find those who are willing to take up the torch or the flaming chalice and be the ones to rage for a while until you are ready to come back. Or maybe we find ways that we can support each other in raging together. For me, that is the message of Thomas's poem for us as you use. It is a reminder that we rage together, not alone. May it ever continue to be so. Blessed be. Amen. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Thank you all so much.